Good day and welcome back to another DB Legends video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at Gamma 1 and how he performs in DB Legends with basically my build and everything considered. Now I'm looking at Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 again because obviously Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 Legends Limited came out and they kind of make a pretty fun team. Also, these guys were kind of the first superheroes units to join the game, so that makes them pretty interesting. And yeah, I think in general, Gamma 1 is just a fun unit. He can surprise a lot of people with his blast damage, let's just put it that way. In terms of his main ability, he's got I'm a Superhero, which lets him draw a special move arts card next, restore his own key, gives him plus 40% to blast damage and key recovery, which is all pretty good, as well as increasing his arts card draw speed. In terms of his unique abilities, he has 50% damage reduction and 70% damage inflicted. This is low. I mean, 50% damage reduction is not huge. It's really not significant. And he draws a special arts card next. He restores his key by 30, and he also increases his arts card draw speed whenever he enters the battlefield, which is pretty good. If there is another android's battle member, he has plus 30% to damage inflicted and plus 30% to key recovery. And now this is important because obviously android-centric teams are kind of back in vogue with the whole Blast Android build. Considering there's red Android 17 and 18, there's also blue Android 17. There's a lot of incentive to go full heavy blast build, and Gamma 1 can surprise people. In terms of his cutting edge, he's got plus 30% to damage inflicted when faced with an enemy. He will seal their one enemy card slot randomly, which is good. The sealed slot cannot be used for 5 timer counts. And every time he uses a base blast card, he builds 5% to his own critical rate, whilst inflicting them with a damage received buff. Now, this is very important because if you can combo in his blast, he can actually rip through characters pretty big. Every time an enemy uses a special move arts card while he's on the field, he'll also restore ally health and also reduce damage by a further 20%, which actually means that if you cover change with him into a special move, he can actually tank it fairly well. And you'll see that kind of pick up, when we take a look at his abilities. Obviously, his blast attack was one of the first ever anti-armor, which I think is very important. His special move increases his own critical rate, which junctures quite well with his passive, and his special card increases his next blast art attack by 100%. Now this is super crucial. Not only that, but he can also restore his own vanishing gauge with his green card, and this is very, very crucial to how he functions. That ability to green card into huge blast damage is very pivotal. In terms of gear and equipment, I showed it to you there. It's pretty straightforward. 2 platinums for this guy, mainly to deal with his blast attack, and then you can kind of choose between a range of other abilities depending on what you want to prioritize. Generally speaking, the blast attack being the #1 priority, as one can imagine. But there's a couple slots that do this, so you don't have to go too crazy. However, I do find that the newly awakened Ha is a pretty good one, just because it gives him plus 6% per episode sagas from the movies, which is quite good if you're running this specific team. But there's plenty of blast-based options you can kind of run. Now, the big thing about him is obviously him stacking up that blast attack. The blue Gamma 1 is kind of the inverse, obviously dealing mainly with strike-based attacks, whereas the Gamma 2 deals with strike attacks, whereas the Gamma 1 deals predominantly through his blast attack, which is pretty imperative to how he functions. Stacking up those green cards into blast attacks is very good. Not only that, but he has the profound ability to actually control the flow of your cards. His green card will convert any strike cards into blast cards, and this is good, especially if you're running the blue Gamma 1. So if you're running, sorry, Blue Gamma 2, I'm mixing up the 1s and 2s, but if you're running Blue Gamma 2, you might get some strike cards, and so being able to convert these into blast cards, or any blast cards from any unit into blast cards, is always something that's very crucial. And you can see here, I mean, the damage is nothing crazy, but it will stack, and it will start to do quite a significant amount, which is very, very good. You can see the crit rate will build up as well, which is very big. And his abilities can do some big damage. Ultimate, very nice there. Good ultimate finish. Good damage build up as well from that ability. So he's just got some good synergy with himself. Now he is obviously lacking quite a bit. He's not a Legends Limited. He's not a anything kind of character, to the extent that he doesn't have huge, massive stats. He's not got the craziest stats in the world. He's got decent levels of health, decent levels of blast damage. Obviously, strike and blast defense looking somewhat mediocre, if not decent. But one thing that is pretty big is his critical. He's got very large critical build-up, and so critical works quite nice in this guy. You can see there, by the way, those blast attacks really starting to stack up. And you can see just how much decent damage he does do as a unit, which I think is testament to how well he does, realistically speaking. He can really do a good job. Not to mention he's got that ability to seal a card as he obviously enters into the battle, and this can disrupt the enemy quite substantially. It's not big, it's not like Piccolo, it's not Legends Limited Piccolo's counter or anything like that, but it is something that is, I would say pretty decent. It's something that can assist in terms of disrupting the opposition, and so it's not a terrible ability, but it's definitely something that you can consider a boon. Now, what would have been good is if he had strike cover change, or blast cover change. I think just that small addition would make him honestly probably a very, very, very usable unit in today's meta. He wouldn't be insane, but I think he would be quite usable. The big problem is, especially if you're running him and Gamma 2, even with the Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 units, is that ultimately at the end of the day, they don't have enough to really disrupt the opposition's combos. So I think overall, to bring him into the current meta, he needs a little bit of tweaking, but I think the kit is very good. He's not a unit that's there to, how can I say, blow people's minds. He's not there to be absolutely insane. He is quite fun though, in the perspective that he can do a very decent chunk of damage. I mean, you can see there, he did a very sizable chunk of damage to this Gogeta Blue. For a green card, hasn't built up his stacks, hasn't built up a lot. That's decent damage. When you get him to his full crit level, and you pop a special move and you pop a blast, then he can do quite a big chunk. It's not impossible for him to really rip through the opposition in any way, shape or form. Not to mention I could improve my gear even further, and those percentages will add up. When you really want to get down to it, he could really start to tear through some of the opposition. He's got some good Zenkais to boost him. I'm currently using the green Android 21, which is a great Zenkai. We then also have, there's, Zenkai Green Goku, who also gives a green movie heroes buff that you could also use if you wanted to. There's a lot of decent buffs for the green movie heroes, and just in general for movie heroes as well. Now, I will say, from my perspective, that I think looking at him as a unit, he's not a priority for the movie heroes team. He's actually relatively difficult to get, considering he's just a general unit. But if you've picked him up, he still could be usable. Tankiness wise, obviously there is that concern. There's a lot of purples in the meta right now, and so it's not necessarily so easy for him to just pseudo-survive any attacks. But, you know, in all fairness to him, he can genuinely do a good job. And he works in great synergy with the Gamma 1 and Gamma 2, which you can see here. And together they make a pretty good pair. Obviously, if I'm going to be honest, they get hard carried by Gamma 1 and Gamma 2, of course. I think it's a bit ridiculous. Sometimes when they get going, they are very, very good. But at the same time as well, you have to respect that he's not the most recent unit. And I think overall he does a pretty solid job in terms of being a unit that facilitates and enables, you know, the Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 to work well. You've got his green card, which allows them to get more blast attack. You've got their, you know, like crit rates. You've got his debuffing of the opposition. If he gets hit by a special move, he heals the rest of the team, which is pretty nice. So there is some decent levels of cross synergy that he has to enable the rest of the team to function. Is he the best unit? Not necessarily. Is he trash? Definitely not. I think it's just one of those things where you have to like accept, you know, that he's aged a little bit, but that he's a unit that's quite a bit of fun. And I think he does a very impressive job, at least for me overall. I think he's a very, very good unit. So yeah, is he top tier? No. Is he solid? Yes, without a doubt. And I think at the end of the day, he's just a unit that's a ton of fun. And I have a lot of fun using him. I think he, you know, is a unit that, at least for me, is one I can enjoy. He's got a super interesting, you know, functionality. You can still do some good damage with him. He can still surprise a ton of people. And so I think at the end of the day, he's a very, very solid unit. But that's it from me. See you guys next time. Bye.